Welcome to Workflow Approval for XPages, creating a new application. This is actually a continuation of Session 3. In Session 3, we created a new database for the vacation request application. We also created an application document to describe where and how to access that database. And then we spent some time building the rules by which the documents will be routed. In this session, we're going to take a look at the profile document and create it, create a new input custom control for the vacation request document, and then create the navigation and view controls necessary to make it all work correctly. So let's get at it and let's take a look and see what we can do. So we've moved into the application in XPages in the web browser. I've logged in as myself as the admin, and here's the profile view, and we have all the profiles from the demo, but nothing else. So I'm going to create a profile document, and the profile is going to be vacation request. That will be the profile name. And the process is going to be called vacation, or profile description, process name, vacation and absence requests. We're going to select the application name, and you see we get them drop down here. Now basically we can use, you can just accept the default settings throughout the application, and there's one place that we do need to make some changes, and that's on the technical tab. The website for the web host, and I'm doing this internally, so it will be the internal address, and if I'm accessing it from the notes client, I'm going to access the development server, and then when I want to launch from the web browser, I want to launch XPstart, and I'll do the same thing from the for the notes client. Notice here that it's going to tag on to, these are used for the link in the email notice, and it's going to tag on some properties to the end of that so that we know what document we need to try to get to, and some things like that. So I'm just going to submit this now, and there is our vacation request. Just make sure that you have your spelling correct here. I made a mistake in doing this. I had an extra space between the vacation and request on a profile that I was trying to do, and I could never find the profile. And it looked right, but couldn't find it, and I spent a lot of time wasting looking around for the answer when the answer was right in front of me. So just make sure that it's done right. Now I've already created a custom control for the input of information for the vacation request document. I'll just open that, and I've nothing fancy here. Actually, I'll get rid of this computed field here at the top because it's not necessary anymore. And so a field for storing the reference number. Notice that it's read-only because we don't enter that. And here's a computed text field that gives a value that says the reference number will be assigned when submitted. And that will only display if the reference number is null. And then I've added this custom control, which is my the custom control CC WFS pick names, and I've made it required that it can pick only a single name because we're asking for a person, one person. Show people is true, show roles is false, and show groups is false. And it's going to be bound to a field called employee in the document in the data source called WFS main doc. I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes and take a look at that and why that's important. I'm going to go back over here, and so now here's a combo box for the department, and the values for that are computed. And what it's going to do is it's going to use the bean app props, passing it the application we're working with. It's going to get open and return the rule database. It's going to get the view VR rules, and then it's going to get column 0 and put that into return. And then I'm going to do an unshift on the array in or vector in return and put select department in front. So that's what we'll show. And if something goes wrong, I'm going to print out to the server console an error message to help me figure out what went wrong. Hopefully nothing will. This department field does on change a partial refresh of the request type combo, which is this combo box right here, and it is bound to the field called type, and the values for it are computed, and it's going to go through and it's going to create a collection of documents. Again, app props with the passing it the application that we're working with, gets the rule database, gets the view VR rules again, and now it gets all entries by key, and the key is the department. Notice here, and I do this in a lot of these, is I define a variable called debug, and in this case it's set to false. If I'm trying to figure out what's going on, I'll just turn that to true, and then these print lines come through, work out. So maybe a little bit of extra execution time to try to do this if statement, but it's pretty nominal. Anyway, so I make a variable return as an array. I get a view entry from the first entry in the collection. I add selected type to the first of the array, and then I loop through the view entries and just simply put the value into there. Now notice here, and if you don't do this, you're going to cause yourself a lot of trouble, is I've got to recycle the view entry every time I cycle through it. So I set TVE, temporary view entry, to the view entry collection, get next entry, passing it to view entry. I then recycle the view entry and then set view entry to TVE and go and loop through. Just needs to be done. And then at the end of this, I take the view entry collection that I defined up at the top there, and I recycle it, and then I return the array return, and that comes into that document. I've got a date picker for a start date and an end date, and I've got a rich text field for a description. This is the part that you designed for your application. This is a pretty simple and straightforward issue, but it gets the job done, and I'm not trying to demonstrate all of the things you can do in XPages, simply that this needs to be a container for the data for our vacation request. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to come back over here to test error that we used before, and now I'm going to take this VRDoc input and drop it into here. Okay, so there it is, and I'm going to save that, and now I'm going to go back over the browser and open test error. So here I am in test error, and this is just simply testing, does my page look the way I want it to look, and does it contain the information? So I can do the processing. I can select so selected a name. There's this is for Bam Bam Flintstone. I know in the rules I got a rule for finance. I got another one for marketing, and I select that. And now it's updated, and it comes out here to my request type. What kind of so I'll say this is an annual vacation. I can pick a starting date and an ending date, and put something in here. And so notice the form or the XPage input essentially works and gets the job done. As I say, you're going to design this form or XPage to do what you want, and so you're not bound by what I've put in here. My purpose is not to demonstrate XPages development, but to show workflow approval and how it works. So let's go back over to the designer. So here we are in designer again with our form. Now, if I look at this custom control, I have a data source on it, and that data source is is set to get the application file path for this application and put it in there. Another thing here, notice that this is an extension library or extension language. It could also be in JavaScript. Extension library or language is just a little quicker and neater. The form is specified as a form VR. The data source is called WFS main doc, and you'll see why it has to be that in a few moments. It's got some code in here for the default action, and some code in here for getting the document ID. Now, what I have to do at this point is remove this, because the data source is going to be defined in the custom control that we're going to create now, and then place the VRDoc input control inside it. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to now create a new custom control. And we're going to call this custom control just CC VRDoc. This is going to be the actual document that we're going to be working with, and it's going to be a compilation of a whole bunch of different custom controls that we're going to pull together to make the whole thing work. So to get this thing working, the first thing I'm going to do is take this main doc template and just place it into here. And this incorporates a whole bunch of different pieces that are necessary to make the workflow work correctly. Notice up here it says that we need to create a data source on this, and that it's going to pull information, and it needs to look like this. So what I'm going to do is, rather than type that all out again, I'm going to open one of the demo forms. So this is the basic demo from the demo application, and it contains this same main document template. But if I come to the data, it's got the definition in here. Easiest way to do this is just to go to the source, and here's this data, and it got a bunch of stuff in there. It goes from there to there, okay? So I'm going to just copy that, come over to the VRDoc, and I'm going to the source, and I'm going to come up here. I'm going to paste in what I just got, what I just did. And now if I come to the data, there it is. Here's the data source, WFS main. Now it did pull the form from for the approval basic, but what we're going to do is just link it to the form VR, and we created that earlier, and it's just a placeholder in the view file. Now notice that what we're going to have here is, this is the same, but because the session scope SS application is going to be vacation requests, it's going to get the application file path out of the application properties. And the default action is here. It's going to be exactly the same in all of these, so you don't have to retype anything. And what's the UNID? And there's the UNID for this document. So I can close that, and I've got this CC VRDoc primed to get the data from the right place. So now we're going to start putting stuff into this custom control. So our next step is, let's make this start to look like what we want it to look like. And as you scroll down, you'll see here this is a bunch of information that is necessary to make workflow approval work, some if you will, sort of default fields. There's a facet here to put for the button bar to be placed, another one for a header, and then another one for the body. And notice we've got some stuff down here, and this is actually all for doing the transaction. If we look at this custom control really has 3 different data sources attached to it. It has the main VR document data source, WFS main doc. It has a data source to the profile document for this document, and it has another data source for the transaction document that it creates. It is a very, very strong advantage to working with the XPages over conventional notes, because you can have as many different data sources on the page as you want. Now, you must look after them each separately, and so the first thing that we need is the button bar. And here's the button bar, and I'm just going to drop it into here. Now, if you look at this, okay, here's all of the actions that the user can do. This button bar also controls and checks to see whether the source document, the VRDoc, is locked or not. And if it is, it puts up a message, and you wait for it, and it will free it up. It also, each of these buttons has various hide when properties assigned to it, or visible properties, and you may want to just poke around in the button bar just to see what happens. They each have got fairly extensive code sitting behind them for the action that takes place. But in any case, that's the button bar goes in here. That's all you have to do, because it is anticipating the data source WFS main doc as being the data source that it's going to act on. We've set that. It's a little inconvenient perhaps, but it makes things work a whole lot better. Next, there's a facet here for a header. If you want to put a header on the top of your form, and I've created a custom control called WFS header. You can modify it and make your own, but I kind of like the way this works. And notice that now I put this custom control inside the facet for the header, and it's got its own facets. So I'm going to go up here, come down, whoops, and grab an image, and I'm going to drop that image into here, and I've got a logo here, so there's the logo. And now remember what we previously said, that a facet can only contain one item. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a panel and I'm going to drop it into here. Now in this panel, I'm going to put in some text. And so there it is. It's not very fancy, and that can be computer text if you want. Now I'm going to select the panel, and I'm going to apply a style to it. And at this point, we don't have any style sheets attached, so I'm going to add a style sheet, and I'm just going to grab the approval one. And down here somewhere. And I select that, and there it puts it in a little. Now there's a subtitle field facet here that you can use as well if you wish, and but in my example I'm going to leave that blank. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my vacation request here, and I have my VRDoc input, and I'm just going to drop it into this facet. Now understand that I'm actually dropping a whole bunch of different items into that facet, but they are they're all contained within the custom control. So as far as the facet is concerned, we've only added a single item. Now, now let's select the custom control, the full custom control. Here it is, the WFS main document template, and then we are going to go to the custom control properties, and it wants to know the name of the default profile. So it's going to be vacation request, and this is where this needs to be exactly the same in spelling as in the actual profile document. And as I mentioned to you earlier, when I typed this in, actually when I typed it in here, I had an extra space in here and it wouldn't find the profile document, and that was very unnerving and caused me no end of concern until I finally figured out that and sometimes it's hard to see that it's just a, so now before we leave the VRDoc, let's go to the custom control, and we're going to give it a category of vacation REQ so that it will get saved down here, and we'll save the changes we made, and there it is now there. So we've got the VRDoc, the doc input, which is contained inside VRDoc, and then our rules information, and so that gets us to that point. Let's go to the test error page that we used before, and we're going to just drop this custom control onto the or the VRDoc custom control onto the test page, and we're just going to go and make sure that we haven't caused any problems in doing what we've done. So there, I'm going to switch back over to my web browser to the test error page. Okay, so here we are with the custom control VRDoc displayed. Notice we've now got the logo, the header block up here. We've got some action buttons up here that are determined by the profile. So we've got that and been able to make those determinations. I can add a user, select, and pick a date, an end date, and put something in here. Now I can't save it. I'm not ready for that. I'm just testing to make sure that the document works the way I want to. And now what we're going to do is build some of the navigation and view information for the application. So it's back over to the designer. We're back in the designer, and notice that our library of vacation request related custom controls is starting to grow, and you can see the wisdom of just using VR as a prefix here, so we know and we keep them all together. So if you're doing a purchase requisition, you might make them all PR, or credit memos, they'd be CR perhaps, or you do it whatever way works for you to make it look and sound right for you. Now, notice up here at the top that we have several custom controls that are just AAA in the prefix, and they are meant for you to use to create and build your process. And so what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm going to make a copy of this and paste it in, and then I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to rename it VR Nav. Now, if you remember back to when we created the application document, we said what was the navigator that we're going to use, and that's the name that we said, and so I'm going to save that. Come back up here. I need one of these as well, and so I'm going to copy this, paste it in, and rename it. Again, we'll call it VR main input, and I'll show you in just a minute what each of these does and how we need to change it. And then finally, I want a default view. I'm going to copy this, paste it in. Didn't want that. I had the wrong things highlighted. I'll delete those two. Don't want them. And I'm going to default view. Control C, Control V to paste it in. And now I'm going to rename this. And we will call this VR default view. And also, if you remember back to when we created the application document, we said what's the name of the default view, and we put in VR default view. So I'm going to save that. First thing I'm going to take a look at is the Navigator. So the VR Navigator, I'm just going to open it up, and this is just what we're calling a dynamic navigator, and it has a whole bunch of different items in it, and so we look at this, and the first item in there is my navigator, or my actions I should say, and here we do have to make some changes, but they're not too serious. The first thing is I want to say that the selected view is going to be VR default view. Not so tough. And then here I'm going to change that to VR. I could go into the source and actually just make a global change on anything that referenced demo to reference it to VR and accomplish the same task. Now, the request view, you really don't have to make any changes to those. Those are standard views. They work in any workflow application, and so that can go for the overview, the approved, and the denied. Now here's a demo help, and we need to change the label on it. But we don't need to make any other changes to it than to change the label, because the rest of it is all taken care of because it knows what application we're working with. Now notice here is this container mode node, which is the manager's view, and it has a number of children in it. We'll take a look at them in a moment. And it's rendered to the roles WFS admin, or if the person has the application role is specified and that person has that role. So we have In the application, we have the role VR manager, and so if the person has the role VR manager, the manager nodes will show up. If I go into profiles, again here, it's going to be working and looking at the application that we're working with. Now, we're going to have to change this, but we haven't made the change in the rules. So what I'm going to do for the moment is remove this reference. When approver automation, again, it looks at the application, so it's okay there, pending transactions. And you can put other views or custom controls and views in here as you might want. So that's going to be all that we need to do for the VR nav. Now that navigator that we just built is going to be used in conjunction with this navigator here called the main navigator. And to begin with, I want to take a look at, this is the button that you press to select an application. And if I look at the source on this, it has a label, but then the children, it gets this as a repeat control, and it uses the Bean SS app menu. And that goes out is a session scope Bean that is computed only once in the whole process of a given session, and returns the valid menu options or application options for this particular user. And then it builds the children list underneath that and displays it. Okay, before we go and test our navigator and make sure that it's all working correctly, we need to get out of here. And I need to look at this custom control, the summary display. All of the standard, quote, views of data that we saw in the demo, the requests, the overviews, etc., use this summary display. And you'll notice this looks pretty familiar by now, because this summary display is just a dynamic content control with a computed page to display in it. And right now, it only displays one application, but we want to display the vacation requests, and so I'm just going to go and page equals CC VR summary display. Now you may remember that we made a copy of the summary display and named it VR summary display. It can be customized. We haven't customized it yet, but we don't have to quite yet. Now, then, let's go and take a look at the navigator. Okay, here we are, and we're now back into the application. I'm in as myself in this case, so I will select the vacation request. The first view that opens is the My Actions view. There's nothing in here. There's no transactions, so there's nothing to populate it. I go to the requests overview, approved, denied. I go to the manager's view. I can see the profiles just for the vacation requests. And the vacation request rules, approver automation, and pending transactions. Before we go and actually create a document, we have one other thing to do here in the vacation request database, is that I don't have a form defined for the vacation request. So I'm going to create a new form. And I'm going to call it vacation request. I'm going to give it an alias of form VR. And I'm going to save that. Come in here. Actually, this form does not need any field definitions in it, but it does need a subform, the hidden field subform in here, and that's all that is needed. So I can save this, save that, and now before we can go and start creating documents, I needed to make a couple of changes to the VRDoc input from the previous example, and I've added a couple of additional things in here, and I'll just go through what I added. I added the reference number, and this is just a field. Notice that it's set as read-only, and it just is a display of the reference number. Understand the reference number is automatically assigned when you submit the document. Now I have a computed field here with a computed visibility on it, which says if reference number is null or reference number is blank, and understand these are actually two different values. Null is not the same as being blank, but anyway, if those are either null or blank, then this will display the value here is simply going to say the reference number will be assigned when submitted, just so that the person doesn't get confused that there's no reference number. The other thing that I've done here is I have created, first of all, a panel, and then inside the panel I've created a table. The panel is called panel type. When there's a change on the department, we see that it will do a partial update on request type combo, which is this value here. So it will get populated with the proper types for this particular department. Then on the type, I have a on change event, and it on the on change on the type does a partial refresh on the panel called type, which is of course this, and it accomplishes that so that it will compute this field. Now if we look at it and we look at the values in it, what it's going to do is get the department and get the app and get the type. We need those three values to be able to work further here. And notice here that right now I've got this set as true. I'm going to change it to false because I don't need it anymore. If it were true, then some of these print statements would show up in the log. You can clutter it up pretty quickly if you don't clean that up. So we'll take a look first of all. If the department and type are null, then it's just going to set the field value WFS approver's default post to null. Critical because it may have been set somewhere else and we need to clean it up. Returns enter a department and type. So we'll get a message that says that you have to do that. And then it comes down to the else statement, which is it builds a key. The key is the department concatenated with a tilde and the type. And then it gets the WorkFlo. And the WorkFlo is, again, here's the app's properties. It gets looked up using the current application. I could just put app in here as well because I do use it up here, a little redundancy. It gets the rule database, gets the view VR rules lookup, and we'll go and take a look at that in just a minute again. And then it gets the document by key, using the key, and true. This true means that I want an absolute match on the key, not a partial match. It then replaces the value in WFS approver's default post and with the values from this document from the field called approver. And then it returns the value from WFS approver default post, and here it does an implode, getting the common name from the return that we just defined right here, and separates it with a break command because we're going to display this computed field as HTML. The rest of this is just kind of boilerplate. Look down here. I call a method recycle objects that's in the WFS utils and recycle the WorkFlo. Be careful. Recycle, recycle, recycle. Okay, I'm going to save that. And so this form now is ready to be used to create documents. Before we go to create a document, let's just do a quick look at the rules database, and we'll look at the views. And we did a lookup into the view VR rules lookup here, and so let's just take a look at that in the notes client. So here it is, and we see we've got 3 values set right at the moment. We will end up with a whole bunch more, no doubt, but and we see the key being the department, the tilde, and then the type of leave or absence that's being requested, and then over here we get who the approvers are. Notice that under sick leave, this is not a user but a group. Doesn't make any difference. It'll work just as well. So let's go and take a look at this in the web browser, and see. Let's create some documents. Okay, here we are in the web browser. I'll select the vacation request, and notice there's no documents in here, but that's okay because we haven't created any. Now let's go and create one. I'll click create a new document. Now notice that we didn't get the dialog. If you've been through the demo, you'll notice that when we said create a document, you got a dialog and asked which kind of a document you wanted to create. In this case, we only have one kind of document in this application, and so it knew that it was a single one, and so didn't put up the dialog. We'll select a person, the department, its annual vacation, and a starting date and an ending date. No, I'm not doing any calculations or computations on how many days this is or any of the other stuff. That would be an extension of your application. I'm just trying to show the basic part of it here. And now I'm going to submit this for approval. And there it is. So now the history we show, test user 1's got it, for them to take action on it, and then it'll be routed through. We'll come in and we'll create another document, and this we'll select a user. It'll be Barney this time. We'll pick marketing. They only have annual vacations. We'll have 23rd as a starting date, and we'll go to April 13th, and we'll submit this one. And there you are. Now, all the rest of it is exactly the same. Just create more documents, route them through, approve them, deny them, do whatever. And so that basically concludes our application design of the workflow approval for the new vacation request application. I'm going to create another session here where I am going to create the vacation request, but I'm going to do it just quickly in summary without detail of what is done at every step, so you can see the specific steps that are required. And in the help, there'll be a list, a checklist sort of thing of things to look at. So I'm glad you were with us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the